Riven Tides, the Exodus-era harbor resort, is a twice-abandoned coastal paradise that holds memories of both the grand ambitions of the Exodus and the reluctant retreat after the first wave. And now, far into the second wave, the rediscovery of Riven Tides brings a new expansion to the lore of Ark Raiders. Let's talk about the lore surrounding Riven Tides and what role it plays in the Exodus, the first wave, and the developments during the second wave. You can use the timestamps to navigate to each chapter. Before starting, let's quickly go over the timeline of Ark Raiders to understand when and how its lore took place. There are 5 important periods: the collapse, the Exodus, the Age of Sunrise, the first wave, and the second wave. We're currently playing in the second wave, in the year 2181, as confirmed by Embark. The other periods don't have specific timestamps with the exception of the Exodus, the period prior, and during the journey into space. J-Cosma Ventures posters in Stellamontis date the Exodus around the year 2082, while graffiti on Spaceport dates it to 2054. This is over a century before the current day. The collapse, when Earth's environment and societies collapsed, was obviously prior to this. The Age of Sunrise, following the Exodus, was a period marked by restoration of the planet's ecology and rediscovery of old technology. However, it was cut short by the first wave, when the first Ark appeared on Earth. This lasted over a decade and ended with the Battle of Victory Ridge. When more evolved Ark appeared, this marked the start of the second wave, the one we're currently in. If you want a more in-depth and detailed explanation of the video, I created this video on the complete lore and story of Ark Raiders, so you can watch that. But for now, let's move on to Riven Tides. A poster of one of the companies involved in the Exodus, Astra Venturo, provides a valuable insight on who was allowed to journey into space. Like us, we believe that you are curious about life beyond Earth. Make sure to book your tickets to the off-world colonies. We provide the security and comfort that you and your family deserves. The last ships before the global hurricane season are leaving in June this year. An exceptional value proposition limited to qualified buyers. Obviously, an undertaking on this scale, with the time constraints that humanity had, meant the opportunity to leave Earth was limited. The limitation was largely monetary, meaning the rich and powerful were likely ensured of a seat on the spacecraft. And this is where Riven Tides ties into the Exodus. The Riven Tides update trailer shows audio flashbacks to the lucky ones that have been chosen to journey into space.
You look exhausted.
Ugh, I barely slept. There's just so much to sort through.
So like, have you been following any of it?
It's all anyone wants to talk about, so yeah.
Careful in the water, sweetheart. Tom, keep an eye on them, would you? Do you tell them yet?
Tell them? I mean, what do you tell them? I told them we're going away. That works, right?
Are you deaf? I paid for this! I'm not asking twice.
Scusa.
Fix it!
Scusa davvero. On the house, alright?
Got you.
No, you can't call that in.
I'm counting
Are you
it.
serious right now? It was out by a mile.
That was it!
Clear as daylight. What, are you blind? Why?
Hey, I
why
know
are we
what
even
I
talking
saw.
about this?
Pull it
no,
together.
absolutely not. Absolutely.
These people stayed in the Panorama Azuro Hotel with all the luxury that entailed. However, the luxury of the hotel complex is contrasted by the industrial harbor on the other side of the dried riverbed. The Port Authority building, stacking yard, rail yard, weighing checkpoint, transfer depot, customs house. It's a stark contrast, as implied by the name, Riven meaning split or torn apart. While the rich were enjoying themselves and waiting until they could go into space, the port was manned with people working day and night to ship resources for research and development of the Exodus. The Marano Road in the bottom right section of the map was a highway used for transport to and through Marano or Buried City and on to Spaceport. However, after the Exodus, the whole place lay abandoned, showing the aftermath of what can only have been a hasty departure. And it wasn't until the first wave that it was discovered again. Once a luxurious Exodus-era harbor resort, the oceanfront of Riven Tides is known to a handful of veteran raiders as the first place they ever witnessed Ark coming down from the skies. The area was abandoned in the early days of the first wave due to its lack of shelter, but that same exposed coastline is now crucial for spotting new threats moving into the Rust Belt. Other than this, there isn't a whole lot known about the first wave or what happened, which brings us to the second wave.
It's still there. I mean, it would be. It held together better than I thought it would.
Riven Tides was rediscovered after Shani sent out a scout to see the state of the coast. I'll read through her report to discover what she's found. I want to be honest about how it all started. Shani's been telling stories of an old first wave refuge along the coast, a place we abandoned years ago when there were too many vulnerabilities. Exposed to attacks from the water but trapped there if surrounded from the west. I get the sense it hurt them when they had to leave. She told me there was a hotel. There was something akin to an accommodation block, but from what I gather, more. A swimming pool, bars, a place where people would dance. And down the coast, a dockyard. It had something to do with the Exodus. She called it a stain on the horizon. Shani isn't all that. Clearly got some resentment about what went down there. Shani said I could have backup, but I told her I didn't need it. It sounded like a good idea, but I thought I'd find a few things for myself along the way. I was only planning on a perimeter sweep, but the place drew me in. There's a story here, one that bleeds out of the cliffs, flows down the dried up riverbed and into the ocean. But the tides just keep bringing it back, like an old grudge. Approach 606. The welcome sign was a salt-worn and peeling but clear enough panorama azzurro. Inside it's strange. Posters still hang on the walls, smashed glasses on the countertops, beds still made. It's like whoever lived there got up one evening and just never came back. Like everything's on pause. I've been thinking a lot about the rooftop bar, imagining people reveling beneath the stars, without fear of what might descend onto them. Exterior rear, 639. I'm in it now, so I decided to press on. The resort wasn't totally abandoned, if you know what I mean, and I don't fancy fighting metal today. Passing the pool, I saw a large plastic slope descending from the hill, some kind of water feature. Up and over, across the ridgeline and down towards the beachfront. Nothing can prepare you for a sunset over the ocean. I stayed here longer than I should have, but come on. Others used to have the same idea, sun loungers and another bar. Damn, these people were celebrating something, alright. I snapped myself out of my daze and set my course along the coast. A bad idea, I know, it's too open, too low. But I had to take off my boots, just to feel the sand beneath my feet. I listened to the birds and felt the heat of the sun on the back of my neck. Walked like that all the way to the harbor. A pack of wasps brought me back to reality further down the beach. Harbor, 714. The docks are something else. Towering cranes, piles of shipping containers and a seawall encasing it all. It's different from the hotel, industrial, cold. It's easy to imagine the raiders going wild for a place like this. Plenty of verticality, cover, space to cause trouble or disappear into. There's signs of flooding too. The tides seem to have swallowed parts of the dockyard and spat it back out again onto the sand. Dead ships lie wrecked and half buried while stacks of containers are toppled and strewn along the strip. Hard to believe this was an Exodus port once. Must have taken a small army to stab it up and keep it running. I wonder who they were and what happened to them. Something tells me they weren't exactly living it up at the Azzurro. I was checking one of the buildings when something passed overhead. Just a shadow, slow, deliberate. But by the time I got outside, I'd lost it. I just want it on record before anything else happens. Someone needs to come back here properly. Full team, full sweep. Shani was right. She usually is. End of report. Coordinates appended, all pictures filed. Awaiting confirmation. The shadow mentioned was most likely the Ark Turbine. It's the newest in a series of developments that escalate the war between the Ark and the Raiders. It started with the descent of the Fireflies and the Comets and was followed by the Vaporizers and Assessors. The Ark Turbine's exact purpose is unknown. When entering from the atmosphere, it will hover over an area, and when undisturbed, it will land. After landing, it will partially open up its armor plating, and its turbine will create suction to retrieve particles. What particles it's after and for what reason is unknown though. It more so resembles the Ark probes and assessors, who similarly land on the Earth's surface and detect and load up samples to send back into space. The only difference is it's only docile when undisturbed, and goes into the offensive when attacked. Perhaps their arrival can be linked to the tremors in Speranza, since these have worsened after their descent. It is clear, however, whoever is up there is looking for something down here, and the conflict will sooner escalate rather than calm down. Though Riven Tides pushes the narrative forward, it's still shrouded in mystery. It leaves us with many questions. What is the purpose of the Arc Turbine? What is the cause of the tremors in Speranza? And what is all this leading to? In time, I'm sure these questions will be answered, but until then, we're all left speculating.